Okay, remember that they're changing my voice. This video is about economic systems, what you might call social systems or political systems. So first of all, I'd like to point out something that people are in denial about. Obviously, colonialism proved definitively that Westerners and others went around the world, they colonized the world, and they made the world a worse place. Part of what I mean by this is that people used to have local governments. Some tribes were more fair than others. Some indigenous peoples were more universally fair than others. And on the spectrum of indigenous governments, which were governed by chiefs, you might call them monarchs, you might call them kings, right? This kind of semantics, but we'll call them chiefs at least. And obviously a lot of people think that the idea of an indigenous chief is greater than the idea of some arrogant person who calls himself a king, but it's a story for another day. So they went around the world and they broke down their political systems and replaced them with communism and capitalism and socialism and puppet governments, proxy governments, and caused all these wars. Everyone knows this, right? But they don't seem to understand that when they did so, on a planet where we cannot point to a single democracy that surpassed the most impressive and moral and righteous and decent of the indigenous systems, of the monarchies, of the systems that have one chief. When they did that, they made it clear that those systems with a chief are greater than a system of democracy. You know them by their fruit. Why has democracy always failed? All the mass murders, all the nonsense. Why is the word democracy like the word demon? Why the word demos, meaning people, like the word demon? Now, what is a demon, right? A demon is an evil spirit, etc. It's also been described as a skilled performer who's channeling an evil spirit, for example, or she's doing something wrong by acting. Okay, like a politician with their propaganda. They had propaganda in Rome. They had propaganda in Greece. Every democracy, France, England, you name it, has always had liars instead of sincere people. They have never been morally precise, nor have they ever tried to be morally precise, not as a group. But there are indigenous martial societies that try with all of their heart to be morally precise. They didn't have these huge rates of depression and suicide and drug overdoses because everyone on some level knows when they hear this that the indigenous system with a moral chief, a moral king, a moral monarch, with a moral messiah who has what you might call a divine right to rule, not because of a Western system or because of some propaganda doctrine, but because they've actually done what it says in Proverbs 16:12, which is establish the throne in righteousness. Who among you would argue that one person who's established the throne in righteousness, which means also listening to the concerns of others, who has the final say in what should be done, is magically not greater than groups of corrupt politicians, which is all we've ever seen in democracies. So when the people got together, they came up with what they came up with. When the people got together and looked at the government and said, what should we do? They came up with what they came up with. Time and time again, whether it's when the democracy first forms its government or it's somewhere along the way after revolts and revolutions, they keep coming up with that. If their judgment is so bad that they need everyone to reassure them that everything's going to be okay if they weigh in, and they have bad judgment, they should be standing firm for what's right, regardless of what danger they face. That's part of brain function. That's part of judgment. That's part of the frontal lobe, decision making, movements, sexual behavior. These things are all connected. That includes reproduction and how you raise your kids and who you breed with. That's part of their judgment. They breed people who don't have the heart to do what's right. Very bad judgment. Now some people might say, hey, that's not fair, just because they're not as brave as you, but you gotta see how these things are connected. Martial arts aren't just systems of fighting. First and foremost, they're life systems about building character. So if you have not been from a long line of people that have been building character, who have sound judgment as a result, how can you say that your judgment is equal or better? And why stop there? Because we're not all the same life form, right? Life form how you've been living your life. The word for and the word form are connected. So you've been living your life in a way that's mediocre, from a long line of mediocre people, maybe arrogant rich people who insisted on being in charge, who brought down the world, maybe just average mediocre people. How can you then tell a great person that he should accept the rule of a bunch of mediocre people? Whether or not you can force people to do that, that's, someone could force a woman to have sex with them. That doesn't make someone powerful or tough. Martial arts aren't about just winning a fist fight or something. It's about character. And everyone knows character is greater than being a big brute or a bunch of brutes. A bunch of idiots with guns and bombs and drones. And so you want your system to be a bunch of knuckleheads pushing people around, brainwashing them with technology, and getting them to vote a certain way. And you want to take the word of the government that has always let you down, that's not what they're doing. That's stupid. There's only one sane way forward. And that is for people to rally and to obey moral precision through me, and for those who are smart enough to know there's a God, to obey God through me.